killed Preddy. They also criticized the 37-year-old VA nurse, saying he was, quote, perpetrating violence. Here's the head of President Trump's
my bad, brother.
Commander Greg Bovino on CNN.
That suspect injected himself into that law enforcement situation with a weapon.
Now, Sarah, the video evidence and eyewitness accounts that have surfaced so far refute that assertion. There's been no evidence that NPR has verified of Preddy brandishing his handgun at any time during the encounter with federal agents. And to be clear, legally carrying a concealed firearm is protected by the Second Amendment of the Constitution.
Okay, so what are gun rights groups saying about this?
So they're taking issue with a post from Trump-appointed U.S. Attorney Bill Staley. He said if a U.S. citizen approaches law enforcement with a gun, federal officers, quote, will be legally justified in shooting them. Gun rights group NRA called this post, quote, dangerous and wrong. Representative Thomas Massey, a Republican from Kentucky and frequent Trump critic, went a step further, saying Staley had, quote, no business in law enforcement or government.
So there is bipartisan pushback against this killing. And
well, shit, I was gonna block it there. Y'all go out the way.
What's in Congress?
Gave me a green.
Well, Senate Democrats are poised to partially shut down the government. The deadline for government funding is Friday, and the Senate still needs to approve the funding for some government departments. One of them is the DHS. After Saturday's killing, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota told NBC she just can't vote for the current funding package. Senators Jackie Rosen, and Cortez Masto of Nevada, and Angus King of Maine have all said they won't vote for it either. That's notable. They're very moderate Democratic senators as well. On Saturday, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said Democrats would not vote against the spending package if it includes this DHS funding, so it's setting up a fight in Congress.
NPR's Luke Garrett, thanks so much.
Turn right.
As we just heard, federal officials claim the latest shooting in Minneapolis, Alex Preddy, approached immigration agents with the intent to quote massacre officers. NPR's Liz Baker is in Minneapolis and joins us now with the latest. So at this point, there are several videos that have been widely circulating showing what happened to Alex Preddy, but there are extremely conflicting narratives emerging. What's going on?
Well, Trump administration officials are repeatedly claiming that Preddy, the 37-year-old ICU nurse who was killed, brandished a weapon and tried to assault officers as they conducted an immigration enforcement operation. There has been no evidence that we've seen to support any of those claims, and here's CBP Chief Gregory Bovino speaking to press earlier today, accusing people of jumping to conclusions.
Wrestling that assaultive subject that was assaulting Border Patrol agents. I'm not going to speculate. I'm going to wait for that investigation to come. No, don't interrupt me. I'm going to wait till that investigation comes out until I make a decision there.
So you can hear, even as Bovino is saying to wait for investigation results, he continues to say that Preddy was the aggressor here, which, again, we've seen no evidence of.
And Liz, that investigation he's talking about is being run by the Department of Homeland Security, right?
Yeah, DHS is conducting its own investigation into what happened, which Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has outright said he doesn't trust at all. The state is doing its own investigation, but they were physically blocked from the shooting scene yesterday by DHS agents, and DHS is keeping all the evidence. Minnesota officials sued this weekend over access to that evidence and are demanding that federal officials preserve it, and a judge granted that request.
Use the right lane, then take the exit on the right.
Politically. Liz, you're there in Minneapolis. How is all of this being received by residents who are caught up in the day-to-day realities of this immigration surge?
There's a lot of anger and anxiety and exhaustion. Last night, there were candlelight vigils all over the city on all the street corners, and I met Nick at one of them. He didn't want to give NPR his full name because he, like others, feared ICE retaliation regardless of citizenship. Here's what he told me.
We just had one of the biggest protests ever yesterday, and here we are today, killing another person. Like, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do at this point? I don't know what to do, and it's just scary.
And other people we spoke with said they're worried that the peaceful protests don't seem to be making a difference, and they're worried that soon the city will be pushed into destructive riots if ICE doesn't leave soon. Sarah, the National Guard are out here. They were requested by the mayor, and we did see them walking roads near the shooting scene last night, and things have been peaceful so far. There were no arrests last night.
Oh, the road again.
But we do know that immigration enforcement is continuing.
We coming on
So
the
there's
road
potential
again.
for elections, although protests today are calling for a continued peaceful general strike. So that's no shopping, no work, no school until ICE
see her.
and CBP leave. And there
Come on,
might be
Cold
some
Truck.
relief legally coming up soon. There is some legal action in the works. The state is going to court tomorrow to try and stop this immigration enforcement surge with an injunction. So we'll see if any of that legal recourse works out to kind of smooth some things over and get some change here.
NPR's Liz Baker updating us from Minneapolis. Liz, thanks so much for your reporting.
Thank you.
A massive winter storm is sweeping across the southern United States and making its way into the Northeast. Just over 1 million homes and businesses are without power as a result of snow and freezing temperatures across several states. WEKU's Stan Ingold is in Richmond, Kentucky, which is now covered in ice, and he joins us now. Hi, Stan.
Hey.
So what do things look like there, Rick?
Well, we had at least some kind of precipitation since yesterday afternoon. It started off with
Man,
snow,
y'all
last
going
night
too
with
slow
sleet,
this
freezing rain.
shit, man.
That's been fairly constant throughout the day.
Recalculating. Get us the way
That led
station.
to dangerous conditions,
Recalculating.
ice-covered roads. Many businesses are closed, and a lot of people are staying off the roads for the most part. This particular storm system is supposed to be out of Kentucky, though, by tomorrow morning. But, Governor Andy Beshear said that doesn't necessarily mean that the emergency is over.
I wouldn't think of it that way. I wouldn't think of it being gone, because if it dumps a ton of ice and it gets really cold, that ice is going to stay, and it's going to stick. So you ought to think about the difficult and dangerous conditions extending into next week.
Road crews
They went too far. Forget it. I done went too far.
Warming centers have been set up all across
Forget it.
Kentucky and
Forget
other
it.
states.
I done went too far.
Been in the path of the storm. And already many government
Okay, I'll
offices
take
and
the
schools have
fine.
announced they'll be closed on Monday.
So
Keep
what's the
left.
Right now it's power outages from
Watch out.
Texas to
Excuse me.
Virginia.
Excuse me.
This leaves some people in dire straits. Just in Mississippi, there was around 175,000 people without power early this morning. Matt Hackworth, who lives in Oxford, Mississippi, he lost power at his home last night. This morning he stepped outside to check on his neighborhood, and this is what he saw.
You take a step outside and look at this ice.
Keep left.
All the tree limbs are covering this thick,
Keep
rich,
left.
bright ice that is no doubt heavy. Every tree limb that I can see out my window.
What up, everybody on YouTube? What up? What up?
Use the right lane, then take the
Hackworth is
exit on
warning
the
his home
right.
of gas loans. He's a pastor, and he says that he knows many others
Take
in
the
Mississippi
exit on the right.
that are relying solely on electric heat who lost their power. But it's not all just ice and snow. There's also been reports of severe thunderstorms and even possible tornadoes in eastern Alabama today near the border with Georgia.
Forecasters are
left.
saying this storm is moving northeast. What else can we expect?
Well, a cold front is expected to follow the storm and keep temperatures below freezing in many areas for several days.
He talking about
And this
the
is contributing
Keep
to
left.
major
Hey,
disruptions
Chet, y'all
in
got this game?
That includes around 11,000 flights being canceled over the weekend. Airlines
What's
cancel
going on?
around 90%
That's the
of the
detour.
flights at national
Let me
radio.
tell y'all how this
Around
detour goes.
84% of the flights of
Let me get
LaGuardia,
y'all-
New York, according to the
get y'all,
national
yeah.
news company Syria.
Don't hit detour.
Airlines are already
hit
canceling additional
detour.
flights for Monday. Now, yesterday, President
But I
Trump
gotta wait at
made,
that.
emergency
Yeah.
declarations for Kentucky and 9 other states. That includes Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, Maryland, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Indiana, and West Virginia. And it looks like New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Washington, D.C.
Yo,
also
bro.
declare states of emergency. The National Weather
Speed
Service
kills,
is
I know. I'm see you right now. Get out the way.
And total snow accumulations could be anywhere between 12 and 20 inches.
Hey, get out the way.
You can see up to 24 inches across the Northeast.
Okay, at WEKU Stan Ingold in Richmond, Kentucky. This is All Things Considered.
I see that truck over there. Oh, the hell? Here.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
As we get closer to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration,
Come on now, I'm hard.
your inquest for life, liberty, and mercy.
Stop playing with you.
So what you're doing is essentially saying, why can't
Oh, yeah, I gotta see y'all. A little lot later.
Our series America in
Name a
pursuit
list.
kicks off with a look at an ambitious Frenchman named Pierre Lafont on the next morning edition.
Picked her up back at Idle. I said Idle.
Tomorrow from 5 to 9 on Public Radio 95.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by the Ann and Henry Zarrow Foundation, committed to supporting nonprofits that alleviate hunger, reduce homelessness, and improve mental health and healthcare access in Oklahoma. More at zarrow.org.
National Public Radio for Northeastern Oklahoma from the University
Yo, if I get one more
Public
detour,
Radio 89.
I'm about to go. I gotta be somewhere already late.
I'm Ryland Barton with these headlines. Federal and Minnesota officials are offering starkly different messages about the immigration crackdown in Minneapolis after another shooting death by federal agents. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino says the nurse who was killed, Alex Reddy, chose to interfere with immigration officers. More than 11,000 flights have been canceled today as a massive winter storm sweeps across the U.S. The snow, sleet, and freezing rain is threatening nearly 180 million people. And Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says his country has no intention of pursuing a free trade deal with China. It comes after President Trump threatened to impose a 100% tariff if Canada went ahead with a trade deal with Beijing. Ryland Barton, NPR News.
I gotta use my turn signal.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Charles Schwab, offering investors choices, full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com.
Look at that view.
From the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, RWJF is a national philanthropy working toward a future where health is no longer a privilege but a right.
Learn the right lane, then take the exit on the right.
And from the sustaining members of this NPR station.
Take the exit on the right.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Sarah McCammon. Millions have watched the harrowing videos of federal immigration agents shooting and killing protester
Turn
Alex
right.
Preddy in Minneapolis yesterday. The agents approached Preddy and another person on a street. They pepper sprayed and tackled him to the ground as he struggled. Federal officials say Preddy had a handgun on his
Use
person.
the right lane.
Oh
There's
my
been
God.
no
Continue
evidence
straight.
that NPR has
That was the
verified
sharpest
that
turn
he
in.
brandished the weapon, and he was on the ground
Continue
when an immigration
straight.
agent shot him. This is the second fatal shooting carried out by immigration agents in the Twin Cities in recent weeks, and that has raised questions about the role of immigration agents. We'll put some of those questions to Chuck Wexler.
I'm plugging my
He's
controller
the
now.
executive director of the Police Executive Research Forum and a police reform expert. Welcome.
Nice to be with you.
How do you train officers, or how do you recommend that
There you
officers
go, we
be
back.
trained to de-escalate in situations where they may be worried about their safety?
I
I'm
mean,
finna
I think
put
this-
Mac
this
on my
is a
on my
very
PC,
important
bro.
question, because in Minneapolis they've had 3 agent-involved shootings in the last 3 weeks. If a police chief had 3 officer-involved shootings in 3
see the
weeks, I
truck,
can
though.
tell you they would be. Number one, they'd say, what are we learning from these situations? How can we handle these differently?
Come on now.
It's very important, for example, that departments
Bro,
have
yo, bro.
strong
I
policies
got
and
somewhere to
tactics.
be, man.
Very important in all of these
Oh, bullshit.
situations.
Use
And
the
it
right
wanna turn
lane,
green.
then
Oh,
turn
okay.
right.
How do you assess ICE's policies and tactics when it comes
Turn
to
right.
these kinds of situations?
Well, I mean, this is a really good question, because
Use
this
the
is an
left
urban
lane,
environment.
then turn
This
left.
is different than most of the environments that ICE and Border Patrol face. And in an urban environment, you
Turn
have,
left.
You know, you have to know the
Turn
community.
left.
You have to be able to work with the community. You know, American police have faced the daunting challenge of officer-involved shootings over
Speed
the last
limit
10
exceeded.
years. And one of the things they've learned is sometimes you have to slow things down,
Uh-oh.
use time and distance, and
Oh
communicate.
yeah, she told me.
There's very little communication in that video that you see. And sometimes you have to take a tactical pause, step back. If I was looking at this from the ICE perspective, I'd say,
Sure.
look, we've had 3 agents-involved shootings the last 3 weeks. They all involve trying to make some kind of arrest. What can we do? What can we learn from these incidents? This is ultimately about the sanctity of human life. 2 people have
go hard.
died. And you know what could happen too, the other side of this, is you're endangering ICE agents too.
Really want it?
Look at that and say, well, we need to figure out a way to ratchet down the tension. What do both sides need to do? And I think it starts with, a tactical pause, stepping back and trying to assess
I did knock over the
escalation.
I have to ask, I mean, as you know, this is the third ICE-involved shooting in several weeks, the second fatal shooting. Is this a matter of a need for better training, or is this about the tone that's coming from the administration?
Look, what would it take for both sides to ratchet it down? But I think that starts, honestly, with ICE sort of saying, look, let's step back and let's look at how we're doing these kind of cases. How can we do them differently? And if this was a local police department, they would be reaching out to the community. They would get the community involved. They would say, we need you. We need
what
to
the
build
fuck
trust.
is in my way?
But when you have federal agents coming into a community, they sometimes come off as an occupying army. And in American policing, that's not what we've learned. We know, communication, trust, all of those things are essential.
I want to talk about the optics we're seeing, some of these images coming from Minneapolis, the way that federal ICE agents are presenting themselves. They're wearing masks, they're wearing these nondescript colors, almost a camouflage look. Whereas you see images of local Minneapolis police in their uniforms, sometimes wearing yellow safety vests. What is the significance of the way that law enforcement officials dress, and what kind of a message does it send to the public about what they're trying to achieve?
Yes, sir.
That's a good point. American police have recognized it's important for them to have their name, their ID, to be
fuck
visible,
you.
to communicate. American police wear body-worn cameras.
Damn, I was late 6 hours.
I should have regained trust and legitimacy with the community. I think when you go into these situations, it creates this image.
No way.
Whatever they're doing is not legitimate. And look, they have a difficult job. I don't blame the ICE agents. I think, though, when you put them in these positions, and you put masks on their face,
do another one.
and they're not communicating,
they
have no relationship with the community, it really becomes almost, a recipe for disaster.
That was Chuck Wexler. He's the executive director of the Police Executive Research Forum. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Out here, though. Oh no! What did I just do?
Weren't allowed to watch as a kid.
What did I just
Maybe
do?
They were
Which one should we do, Chad?
Too sexy, or full of swear words that Mom and Dad did not want us repeating around the house. So on this week's movie segment, we're going to talk about those forbidden films and whether or not they live up to their allure when we see them later. Joining me now are All Things Considered producer Avery Keatley and Weekend Edition producer Ryan Bank. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey there.
So I've gathered you here because I understand we all had kind of similar backgrounds in our upbringings. A lot of rules about what we could and could not watch, right?
It's true. Yeah.
So Avery, I'm going to start with you. What kinds of films were off limits in your household?
Yeah, I would say the general rules were some of the things you mentioned in the intro, right? Anything that was too scary, too sexy, too gory, those were automatic outs. But also something that my parents were really concerned about was witchcraft. I was growing up in the mid-90s, early 2000s, and there was this big boom of interest in Wicca and witchcraft. And that generated a lot of fear in the evangelical circles that I grew up in.
Harry Potter books.
Exactly, yeah.
I already did
but I mean, this even applied for us to some Disney movies. So, for example, I wasn't allowed to watch Pocahontas. Because if you remember Grandmother Willow, she's this sage, wise woman tree that gives Pocahontas advice, mystical advice.
Hello, John Smith.
Pocahontas, that tree is talking to me.
Then you should talk back.
So things like that, right? This kind of anything that had a spiritual aspect that didn't sort of align with mainstream Christian values, I would say was pretty suspect. But then, of course, as you mentioned, right, Harry Potter was taking a lot of heat in evangelical circles, and I think it was just a really easy thing to say no to because it had witchcraft basically in the title.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a what?
A wizard.
Speed limit exceeded.
Oh, hush. I know.
It was really obvious.
Use the right lane,
about,
then turn right.
It's about witches and wizards
turn right.
and sorcery.
Turn right.
That was just a big no-no.
Did you ever go back and watch any of those?
Speed limit
yeah,
exceeded.
so I remember watching Pocahontas with some friends.
Look at that truck,
It's
Jack.
like one of my favorite
Use
Disney
the right
movies.
lane.
now.
Thing.
I have
Then
some
turn
more
right.
of
See what
it.
happens when you censor something?
those. Right. And then Harry
Turn
Potter,
right.
you know, is kind of interesting. Like,
Let's see how my
parents
business
kinda came
doing.
around on that one. I think in some ways because it was so ubiquitous.
Yeah, okay.
And they eventually ended up like really enjoying
Everybody
the
at?
series because it's, you know, it's a really
Everybody on the
solid
map,
story, right, at its heart.
Okay, what about you, Ryan? What did your parents forbid, or try to forbid at least, in your house?
Well, you know, it's funny because I had a little bit of a house divided. My mom was
They
not
all allow.
really as strict. She kind of was more laissez-faire on what was allowed. But my dad kind of filled in the gaps there. He was much more strict, just from a very religious background. His side of the family was Pentecostal. Oddly, though, violence was mostly okay, but sex was really what he had a problem with. And I remember specifically an experience
Watch out.
of going to Blockbuster and renting the movie Big
Use the
Daddy
left
because it
lane.
had Adam
Then
Sandler
turn
in it.
left.
And it was supposed to be a funny comedy.
Oh my gosh. I can't do this shit. I'm
Turn
sorry.
left.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Y'all gonna have to move.
parenting, right?
Excuse me. 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 I got somewhere to be. Excuse me. Sorry. I'll pay later.
We started
Use the
movie
left
at
lane.
beginning
Then
of
turn
the
left.
kiss- the kiss between two men, and that was the end of it.
All right.
Oh, he gets to
my
a
dad
point.
shutting it off.
He gets
But
to
at
a
the same
point,
time,
Chad.
it was
Oh
funny
my
is that he
God.
had no problem with this kind of like blood-soaked colonial violence of Mel Gibson's The Patriot.
We are citizens of an American nation, and our rights are being threatened by a tyrant 3,000 miles away.
Would you tell me, please, Mr. Howard, why should I
Gets
trade
to a point.
one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away?
Honestly, these days I'm more offended about the movie's historical inaccuracies, but that's a completely different conversation. I will say the only caveat
Begin route
for permissibility
navigation.
of violence was that the violence in something that seemed silly like Die Hard or something pseudo-historical like The Patriot was fine, but man, did they have a problem with slashers and anything gay.
She said,
My daughter ended up
whoa.
being a gay scream queen. So I don't really know if that had
Continue
any
straight.
purpose. Listen, I should also mention my dad is much better these days.
Bro, why are we
I've
like,
been
come
out
on,
and open
truck?
gay for a long time.
Watch
I
out.
think
I got somewhere
really
to be.
was trying his best with the
Jet
tools that
speed
he had
limit.
available.
Excuse me.
I get that, you know, and it's
Ah.
funny you
The
talk
left
about
lane.
the
Then
distinction
turn
between
left.
sex and violence. And there's some of that in my household, and I'm a bit
Alright,
of
I'll
an
use
earlier
Turn left.
vintage than either of you.
Turn
So
left.
I was a child in the
Yeah, now
80s
you
and
got away from
90s
me, truck.
in an evangelical
What you talking
household,
about?
and there was definitely
6
a
hour
huge
ride.
around
Okay,
sex.
that
There were
bad.
sex scenes. I remember my parents going to see Sleepless in Seattle and like coming home and being like, "Yeah, it was kind of a nice movie, but like, I don't know, they were in bed together and they weren't married."
Oh, shoot.
Like if you've seen that, it's not like within a
I'm
sex scene,
tripping.
they were just literally in bed together.
Right.
I'm
There's
tripping.
the implication, for sure.
The implication. Yeah.
I feel like there were rules, but every rule had like
Speed
a
limit
laundry
exceeded.
list of caveats.
30, I
to
know.
it, at least in my house.
Yeah, same.
Ryan, were there things that you watched later when you got older that maybe you
Not too late. It was already red.
as a kid?
Or yellow.
I ended up going crazy watching all the horror classics with friends that had lenient parents, or
I know,
finding ways
Melissa,
to
they
break
tripping.
the parental lock code on the cable box to flip on HBO.
I want to put some different music on, but I know I'm going to get
I
copyrighted,
still
bro.
remember the password. And some of it really wasn't worth the trouble I got into after being caught. But hey, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of it really just kind of added to my overall love of film. So,
You know, on that note, I think we've all sort of indicated that, you know, maybe we see some of those rules differently as adults than we did as kids. And I, as a parent,
Speed
I
limit
definitely
exceeded.
do, because one, parenting is way harder than it looks when you're a kid.
Speed
and,
limit exceeded.
You know, it's tough, right? Especially
I got to get in this lane,
in
bucko.
today's
Watch
culture,
out.
where
I got to get in this lane.
so much entertainment, so ubiquitous.
Speed
not just
limit
movies.
exceeded.
And it's tough to say no sometimes, and it's tough to decide when to say no
Keep
because,
left.
you know, you could have the same conversation.
excuse me.
every day. Do either of you think your parents, you know, might have been a bit of a
my bad. My,
say no to some of these films when you were
Speed limit
I think my
exceeded.
parents were genuinely trying to make their best decisions about what was good for us to watch and what, you know, they didn't feel like we were old enough to watch yet. But also, my parents were really early adopters of Netflix back in the days when they mailed
Oh.
DVDs to your
Speed
house.
limit exceeded.
John John one.
And it was great because they really wanted us to like watch a lot of film. It's Peace Falcon, North by Northwest. You know, they took us to see the original
get your big ass
World
on, man.
Second Run Cinema in my
Ooh,
town. I
alright.
mean, they
Let me
did
stop.
a lot to like give us a
stop.
really strong film
I get him
education.
doing
And in
shit.
many ways, like, I think they shaped
I
my
swear
movie
I'm not
viewing
gonna
in
shit.
that way.
Don't let me
So
get
I
him
think
through
for
it. Oh
me,
yeah.
you know, they
And we
set
catching
these
up. Hey.
limits, but they also
I'm gonna go on first Trisha with this shit.
I have to say, while I agree
Hey,
with
fuck you, mate. Hey, fuck you.
Trying his best. He was an immigrant who was newly immigrated to the United States with a different culture and a different set of norms. But
What the
I think one of the times that I would consider him making mistakes, he definitely saw the error in his ways later on when it came to censoring things out of fear.
Oh my
And as
god.
I said, you know, we have a good relationship these days, and you know, I think I have all of his support, but I still can't help but imagine how things could have been easier if, you know, maybe I was allowed more queer representation, for instance. Still, I have to be honest, my love of film, as Avery's is in large part a consequence of both my parents' insistence that I experience things, artistic things, like, you know, James Bond, Indiana Jones, Jaws, Goodfellas. I'm grateful that despite some missteps, I still had a childhood filled with great movies.
That was NPR's Avery Keatley and Ryan Bank. Thanks to you both.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're listening to All Things Considered from
We gotta improve, bro. And I'm finna show y'all the cut.
Within minutes of being sworn in last
Show y'all
year,
the back.
President
Hold on,
Trump
we get on the
suspended
straight
a
road.
process that had allowed
Show y'all
migrants to
my back.
schedule appointments to seek asylum in the U.S. Thousands of migrants from around
I
the
see it.
world
I got
remain
the
in limbo
little
at the
pretty
border with Mexico.
rock
And many
right
are
there.
now filing asylum
I see the bag.
applications with Nina Kravensky reports.
Use the right lane and take the exit on the right.
That was a save. Oh.
Jessica Minero and her husband, Antonio Acevedo, are selling
Take the exit on the right.
just like the ones they used to make at home in El Salvador, sweet ones and savory.
Nice
People like them
little.
because they
Keep
make them
left.
spicy, Minero tells me. They've set up shop underneath a highway sign reading Frontera, USA, selling meals to the constant flow of drivers heading north.
Okay.
Many people, when they pass, say, "Get in, we'll take you," she adds. But the couple
Wait,
is
I need
stuck
some gas.
in
Let me see.
Nogales. They narrowly missed their
That's
January
enough.
18th U.S. asylum appointment
Well.
by just over an hour, delayed when they were stopped by
can hit.
Mexican police for routine
hit.
search. 2 days later, President Trump took office and canceled all asylum appointments, and the process has never restarted.
Probably hit for a cop.
It's incredible, but it's true. Already a year in Nogales, Minero says. After fleeing threats from organized crime in El Salvador, they're now applying for asylum in Mexico. They're among thousands of migrants from around the world who, blocked from the U.S., are turning to Mexico for safety. Across the street at the Kino Border Initiative shelter, tables and chairs sit empty. The flow of migrants to the U.S.-Mexico border has nearly stopped. About a month after Trump closed the U.S. border, Kino's in-house lawyer, Rafael Che, began helping migrants apply for asylum in Mexico. 11 months later, none of his 14 active cases have been resolved, despite Mexico's promise to generally decide claims in 45 days. The asylum seekers he serves are getting desperate, Che says. The months have stretched on for Diego. We're only using his first name because he left Ecuador after violent extortionists attacked him in his home. The 62-year-old civil engineer narrowly missed securing an asylum appointment before Trump shut down the process. Sometimes I wake up wondering why I did it, why I made the journey, and why I'm still here, Diego says. Despite everything, including being unable to work,
Hit that
choices
sub,
to stay
man.
positive.
We
Under
got
Mexican law, asylum seekers are supposed
I got
to
pre-days
issue
live.
temporary
Y'all can watch. I'm finna
documentation,
upload some
allowing
video.
them to work and access basic services while their cases are processed. But Mexico has drastically reduced the number of documents it issues, a shift refugee agencies say began under pressure from the Biden administration in an effort to curb migration. This process isn't easy, Diego says. You have to have patience. And so Diego whiles away his days in the shelter, watching training videos on YouTube, trying to stay up to date for any future jobs.
Do it.
Back on the other side of the street, Minero and Acevedo are also waiting, hoping to be reunited with their daughter and granddaughters. They left them in southern Mexico more than a year ago, knowing the journey north was too dangerous. They can barely afford the one room they rent in Nogales with the money they're making selling food on the street. If there's no decision by this summer, Minero says, they plan to return to El Salvador.
Decidirnos pues, porque arriesgamos la vida allá o nos quedamos aguantando aquí.
Either we risk our lives there, Minero says, or we keep trying to hold on here. For NPR News, I'm Nina Kravinsky in Nogales, Mexico.
This is NPR News.
Recalculating.
I'm Dennis McGilvery, host of the Rhythm Atlas. This week we'll celebrate Scottish traditional music in connection with the January 25th birthday of Scotland's national bard, Robert Burns. You'll hear some Burns songs along with a wide variety of artists showcasing the many dimensions of Scots trad music. Tune in Sunday at 6 on Public Radio 89.5 KWGS.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by TSET, the Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust, dedicated to reducing tobacco use, with a reminder that children exposed to secondhand smoke face a greater risk for asthma attacks and bronchitis. More about the risks of secondhand smoke at tobaccostopswithme.com.
National Public Radio from the University of Tulsa. Public Radio 89.5 KWGS HD1 Tulsa.
I'm Ryland Barton with these headlines.
Come on, man.
1 million people are without power as a winter storm rolls across the country from New Mexico to Maine.
Bro, this drum glitch. I'm telling you, when I be stopping there, bro, that drum is glitch, bro. No, bro. No,
A growing number of
I'm
Republicans
not doing
are
them no
pressing
more,
for
bro.
a deeper investigation into President Trump's immigration
These do
crackdown
not work
after
for
a
me.
Border Patrol agent
Oh, yeah,
fatally shot another person in Minneapolis. And the New England Patriots are facing the Denver Broncos in the
Oh, man.
AFC Championship.
Everybody better get off the road.
Here tonight, the LA Rams take on the Seattle Seahawks for the NFC title. Winners go to the Super Bowl next month in Santa Clara, California. I'm Ryland Barton. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from FJC, a foundation of donor-advised funds working to maximize the impact of charitable giving and to create customized philanthropic solutions. Learn more at fjc.org. From the Walton Family Foundation, working to create access to opportunity for people and communities by tackling tough social and environmental problems. More information is at waltonfamilyfoundation.org. And from listeners like you, who donate to this NPR station.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Sarah McCammon. President Trump has repeatedly said that acquiring Greenland was necessary for national and international security reasons, and often points to Russia and China's presence in Arctic waters as an example. NPR's international affairs correspondent
Speed limit exceeded.
reports on just what Russia and China are doing in the North.
The warming climate is having a profound impact on the Arctic. Once forbidden waterways are gradually opening up. The search for resources is intensifying, and Russia is increasingly active in staking its claim. Not surprising, considering more than 50% of the Arctic Ocean coastline is Russian.
The Arctic has been of great strategic importance to Russia, both from a security and economic standpoint, for a very long time.
Sophie Artz focuses on Arctic security and geopolitics at the German Marshall Fund, or GMF, in Washington, D.C. She
Use
says
the right
melting
lane,
sea ice is
then take
creating
the exit on the
economic
right.
opportunities for Russia, from resource extraction to shipping.
Russia has placed a great focus
Take the exit on the
developing
right.
the northern sea route, to which it controls all access.
Keep
in the
left.
hopes really of turning it into a transit
Speed
route
limit
longer
exceeded.
term, and simultaneously to drive investment into its energy and infrastructure projects.
I'm
At the
pushing
same
it.
time, the Kremlin has
Goes
been
off.
modernizing its military assets, bases and the like, in the high north, as part of its effort to restore its geopolitical status in the world, says Klaus Dodds, professor of geopolitics at Middlesex University in London.
So as part of that process over, I would say, 15 years, Russia reopens Arctic facilities, rebuilds and extends, in some cases, runways and those kind of things.
Dodds, co-author of Unfrozen, The Fight for the Future of the Arctic, says Russia still employs a Cold War naval strategy of using a series of defensive measures to protect its nuclear-armed ballistic missile submarines around the Kola Peninsula in the Arctic.
The only thing that has changed is Russian submarines are a great deal more sophisticated than Soviet submarines.
Sophie Arts, with the GMF, says Russia poses a more acute threat to the Arctic than China. Although it's not an Arctic nation, she says China has ambitions in the polar region, focusing on commercial shipping, including building a fleet of icebreakers, putting up a network of satellites in polar orbits, and scientific expeditions.
So, for instance, China is mapping the seabed. We've also done research at GMF that suggests that they're doing acoustical research, which really helps to create greater awareness of the operating environment in the Arctic, but could also support the operations of submarines and other undersea technologies.
Dodd says China is increasingly relying on Russia for access to the region. It's also trying to ingratiate itself with others in the high north.
So China's taken a great deal of interest in trying to cultivate resource-based relationships with Arctic states and trying to get into the Canadian mining sector, for example, has tried to buy infrastructure in Greenland, largely rebuffed on national security grounds.
But China has also demonstrated a show of force against the U.S., is conducting joint military air and naval maneuvers with Russia in the Bering Sea near Alaska, but not anywhere near Greenland, says Walter Humpert with the DC-based Arctic Institute.
I'm the man that
Greenland is surrounded by Russian and Chinese vessels is simply not true. It's actually quite the opposite, that there's a lot more Chinese and Russian activity off the Alaska coastline.
While the Trump administration has been focused on Greenland of late, there just may be a problem to address.
Beginning route navigation.
Jackie Northam, NPR News.
Making plans to hit the gym in the new year? So are more young people across Asia, where health and wellness is a booming business. And one new competition has become especially trendy in recent months. Stephanie Yang.
She's gonna make it to the gas station.
The event is known as HYROX, short for Hyperboxing. This timed fitness competition is made up of 8 workout stations, broken up by 1 kilometer laps. Music blares in the background, and MCs cheer racers as they cross the finish line. The Global Racing Challenge, which started in Germany in 2017, is kind of like CrossFit, but less intense. Now its events are selling out in Asia. In Bangkok, which hosted its first HYROX race last year, the bigger challenge has become snagging a ticket, which costs about $100 to $150.
When we opened Bangkok, we were a little bit caught off guard. We did a one-day race to start with.
We're gonna make it.
We sold out immediately, basically, like 4,500 people in the first 18 hours.
This is Richard Cowley, director for HYROX events in Asia, where participation has doubled in the past year. Training sessions have been popping up all over Bangkok for the next ones in March. Gym owners in Bangkok say fitness used to be
the right lane, then take the exit on the right.
Bodybuilders. But these days, young Asians are much more conscious of their health.
Take the exit on the right.
For physical activities, from Pilates to pickleball, making the industry a multi-billion-dollar business opportunity across Asia. Jack Thomas, who's been running a gym in Thailand for about 10 years, says programs like HYROX are the latest iteration of the wellness trend in the region.
Well, it was probably 18 months ago that we joined as a HYROX gym. We've just seen sort of explosive growth really. So now both of our locations are HYROX training clubs. Our HYROX classes are some of the busiest that we have.
Thomas runs 2 out of 25 gyms in Bangkok offering HYROX classes. At one of them, 32-year-old Pravin Haya and her boyfriend are training for a proper race in Seoul.
Take the left turn
The last
ahead.
race in Bangkok sold out. She says she likes HYROX because it's challenging, but
Turn
accessible.
left.
But I think for Thai people in general, it's a whole hype. And HYROX is so like easy to enter.
Recalculating.
Because you can do
Recalculating.
as a couple, you can do as a team of 4. So the bar
Recalculating.
to enter the race is very low.
I tried out some classes myself in October. They play high-energy music and repeat movements from the competition, like burpees or rowing, in short, intense bursts.
This is my third Hyrox class here in Bangkok, and they're all about the same, going through the stations. Today we're doing 4 and switching through them. It's about 15 people here.
Oh, wait.
It's 30 minutes in, I'm already pretty tired.
Well, I didn't think that.
Another trainee here is Tawan Taradola Tanek, a 28-year-old pet groomer and YouTube host. He started taking Hyrox classes
Use
to
the
try
right
something
lane.
new.
Then
and
turn right.
because his fitness idols were doing it too.
Many Thai influencers go for the gym, maybe Pilates, Hyrox, get IAT, go running, and
Turn right.
everybody are following them.
Gym owner Thomas says Hyrox has helped open the door for amateur athletes to try out new, rival competitions as well. That's putting him on the lookout for what trend may come next.
People eventually will be looking for new experiences, new things to do.
What's key, he says, is to keep them from getting bored.
Oh, man.
For NPR News, I'm Stephanie Young reporting from Bangkok.
What if the survival of the 1960s U.S. space program was in the hands of a magic, spellcasting, mystery-solving math genius? In her genre-bending new book, The Star Seekers, author Nicole Glover mixes fantasy with history as a brilliant aerospace engineer must figure out if a deadly accident in her research lab is actually murder.
Keep left.
And if it's all
Fuck that station.
She's fighting against dangerous curses and spells, but she's also a black woman fighting against racism in a world where black people are protesting to demand their civil rights. Nicole, welcome to the program.
Hi, happy to be here.
So, Starseekers is the 4th book in your Murder and Magic series, and your characters inhabit an alternate fantasy world. There are elements of reality and unreality, but the story is framed within the actual history of Black Americans' fight for freedom and civil rights. Just tell us more about this book, and I'm especially interested in how you decided to weave together these elements of reality with magic.
So, happy to. The Star Seeker is in many ways the long journey from my very first book, The Conductors, where readers can first go into this alternate history with magic and all these things tied to all the great hits of the historical time periods. The Star Seeker kind of builds upon that world, moving us from the 1870s to the 1960s, where readers can see how much has changed since then and how technology interplays with magic. But another aspect, always important for this series, was the historical aspect. I was very deliberate in setting the world in historical time periods, and even though there's some alternate history aspects in this book, especially the Star Seekers having an actual black astronaut, I try to play hard and true to the historical time periods, historical big moments, because that was very important for me to highlight and really illuminate aspects of history we don't often talk about, especially in these days.
So as you're sort of toggling between magic and fantasy and, on the other hand, science and history, how did you decide what the blend should be between reality and fantasy?
Yeah, it's always one of those things I kind of get a feel of as I'm going through the story. Sometimes it's more I want to highlight a particular magic moment, or maybe sometimes I feel like, I haven't really talked about magic for a while, so I should probably remind people this story is about fantasy. But I want to make the magic aspect of the world seem very natural. So I have things, for example, that the main character, she rides a broom around. So, when she's at work, she stores a broom in the broom locker, or there's like broom racks around. And just kind of make that feel like a natural part of things. And I think it's also kind of tied to my fact that I always regret that we don't live in the world with magic. So I try really hard to imagine what I would like to see a world with magic in every aspect of things that's more overt.
I mean, sometimes it seems like the closest thing we have to magic is technology, but throughout time immemorial, humans have sort of ascribed to things they didn't understand some kind of magic or mystery. How do you think about that?
I think because of the traditions of the past, it's very easy to assign magic to things because we don't know the answers and we don't know what forces are in work. So I think at that time, magic was the best go-to answer. And especially when you look in science fiction where we have a blend, where we have time travels, we might go from the future to the past where they have technology as their magic. Now, like if somebody from even as far back as like the 1920s comes to our time period, they will see everything we have from like planes to our tablets or phones as like some form of magic or illumination, which seemed like a marvel.
I think about this all the time. I live in a house that's over 100 years old, and it's got like old radiators now defunct in it, and old oil heaters downstairs, and it's got like the remnants of phone cords that were strung along the wall, and then
Use
we also
the right
have
lane,
electric
then
charging
take the
station
exit
in
on the
front
right.
for the car. And like the span of things that have happened in such a short time. Like I've had this exact thought. I mean,
Take the
man,
exit
somebody
on the
from
right.
1920 came into this house. They just would not even believe the way that we live today in such a short time.
And it's really rapid. We went from airplanes
Turn
to
left.
the moon within a lifespan.
Now, the main character in Starseekers is a young woman named Cynthia Rhodes. And she suspects that something sinister might be up at her NASA lab. But she is not your average amateur sleuth, and she's not your typical scientist. What kind of a character are you trying to create with Cynthia?
Yeah, Cynthia is kind of the legacy of a
Continue
mystery
straight.
solving dinosaur.
Yes, sir.
Her great-grandparents have been doing it since the 1870s. And she's grown up around people who may not all be the detectives and sleuths, but they are all interested
Turn right.
in solving
Then
the
use the
unsolvable
right
or
lane.
mysteries or the unique things that happen around them. And she's also grown up around adults, seeing the world, traveling, going on adventures. She's now in a place where she has to actually look out for much younger siblings and kind of create like a found family with her friends and cousins and things like that to kind of rebuild what she wants her life to be and figure out what's kind of take charge of her destiny.
Are there things about Cynthia that you identify with?
I actually think she's probably the one the most like me character-wise, being slightly introverted. Kind of having a small selection of friends that she kind of combines with and moves around.
Use the right lane.
Even this small
Then
things
turn
that,
right.
Enjoy
Oh.
And it's one of those things you really don't plan. I always say that
Turn
authors
right.
always put a little bit of themselves into
Later.
their characters. And
Arrive.
this one has kind of accidentally kind of happened, and it works pretty well because a lot of these things that got me into
He's
a
regular
lot of
friend.
things I've mentioned within the Starseekers are various things I'm fascinated with.
They won't.
that all kinds of leads
I knew they was
together
gonna want it
to
like that.
create a character who is similar to me, but not exactly, and that's some of the fun to
Let me
kind of
see if I can hit it like
explore
this. Hold
how
on.
I can bring
Bet you I can't watch
my
this.
personality to her, and also where she's different as well.
Well,
You
wait,
wrote about a
watch
time,
it, watch it.
1964, a critical time, a tumultuous
Wait,
time
wait,
in
hell,
American history
hell,
and Black history. What do you hope your readers will take away, specifically
Hey, you
from
know what? Oh, I
your
can't even
sort
go
of
that way.
reimagining
There we
of
go,
this
yeah.
chapter?
Oh, no. No.
People remember that
I just
in the
had it.
1960s,
Wait,
in particular, had a lot of
Will.
important and great
There
things
you go.
happening, that there's
Come on.
also life happening
Come
alongside
on.
these things.
Yes, sir.
Inside
I'm playing
these
that.
particular moments that
We
we
going first
see
in
in our
this bit.
history textbooks, that
We going first in
there
this
are
bit.
smaller things of
Don't hit the thing.
joys that seem
Uh-oh.
silly, that's
See?
still going on
Never
alongside
mind. Never
things.
mind. It ain't
We
gonna work
see
like
ourselves
that.
in
We
these
just
times
gonna
as
go like
well,
that.
that history is happening around us, but life goes on
There you
within
go.
our with
Oh,
friends
he's
and
get
we
real.
to help us propel or
This is
interest in the
heavy.
future.
Nicole Glover is the
Yup,
author of
yup,
the Murder
yup.
and Magic
Oh,
series.
oh.
Her new book.
Oh my God.
Thank you
This
so
shit
much.
is hilarious. Hey, imagine me really doing this shit in real time,
And
bro.
finally, in Tulsa,
There you
Oklahoma,
go.
extreme
Yeah.
cold temperatures couldn't stop some intrepid
Okay,
sledders
okay.
from getting
Okay,
outdoors.
okay. Fix it.
High schoolers Luke Zafransky,
yeah.
Jack Stowe, and Clay Jordan were enjoying a favorite sledding spot and hoping for a day off school.
I've been coming
There
here
you go.
since
Yeah,
I was,
yeah. We're
really
getting
young.
somewhere.
It's pretty
Yes,
good.
sir.
It's more
Yes, sir.
like,
Yes, sir.
icy snow.
Hey, this is straight comedy.
It's
Shit.
It's not slushy or
It's
sloppy.
like watching somebody like,
He's out, so-
fuck it. I'm gonna do this shit though, bro.
See how that goes.
Oh, man, fuck
Yeah,
that
that's not bad
shit.
at all. Sure. Yeah, it's pretty nice out. Nice and powdery.
Further along, Jeremy Commons would not
You
be
are
deterred
fucking
by a
buddy,
lack
bro.
of supplies at Lowe's.
You are
He found
fucking
something
buddy.
and made do.
Oh,
It's concrete mixing bucket.
I
Said they were
appreciate
sold out
everybody that
sleds.
tuned in, man.
Looked like it worked, so gave
Watch
it a
them
shot.
live streams. I'm finna
Yeah,
post
it's
this
doing
video.
all
I
right.
appreciate y'all. Gone. Gone.